recently living through one of the most controversial presidential elections in our time. It's hard not to find yourself wondering what the US governance was like in the past. Though many people agree that Trump was far from a great leader, surely there would have been others who have done worse for the country, right? There have been 45 presidents of the country, excluding the 2020 presidential election winner, Joe Biden. Today, LUX Life brings you the 10 worst US presidents of all time. Let's start with number 10. Number 10. Millard Fillmore. Fillmore was the 13th president of the United States and one of Lincoln's major opponents in the age. Though they share the same opinions regarding slavery, suggesting that it should be abolished, his ideologies did not translate through his actions. He was a man who was known to have feelings and opinions about one thing, yet not have the strength to carry out thought-based actions. Fillmore succumbed to the pressures of the southern states to maintain slavery in the country. Though he personally opposed the concept of slavery, he accepted their views and slavery continued. He signed the Fugitive Slave Act, which meant that owners could hunt down their slaves across the country if they fled. Number 9. Zachary Taylor. Taylor was a wealthy man who was known to have plantations. Now, as we know, where there are plantations, there are likely to be slaves as well. It was fairly odd because though he owned close to 100 slaves, he was also known to oppose slavery and some of the acts related to the slave trade. No wonder he makes it on the list of worst US presidents. Zachary died in office after eating vegetables, which might have been rotten. It was commonly theorized that he had been poisoned, but in reality, his corpse was exhumed in the early 90s. Foul play was ruled out. Number 8. John Tyler. Tyler was in fact the vice president to Henry Harrison. Harrison passed away 1 month after taking office. Tyler found a judge to swear him in rather than acting as the vice president. Rather sneaky, considering the president has just died, don't you think? Almost as if he had vested interests in the president dying, huh? However, worry not, there are no conspiracy theories about this. It's simply something interesting to consider. One of the biggest mistakes he made was annexing Texas to the south and bringing in Florida to the state's union. It was commonly believed that he was a significant figure in the reason why the Civil War started in the 19th century. Before we continue, remember to subscribe to LUX Life and click the bell icon to get regular updates on our latest uploads. Also, if you like this video, click the like button and share it with your friends. Number 7. Henry Harrison. Yes, we just talked about him. He was the one who died just a month into his presidency. He was famous for not wearing a raincoat or taking shelter from the rain during his famous inauguration, a decision which made him one of the most famous presidents in history, but for all the wrong reasons if we are being honest. Due to the fact that he did not protect himself from the elements, he contracted pneumonia and died after taking office. Rather tragic that we never got to see Harrison's presidency. He might have been one of the best presidents in history. You never know. However, it's hard to ignore his ridiculous mistake. Take note, President Biden, keep an umbrella handy. Number 6. James Buchanan. The 15th president of the United States was one who was generally disliked by just about everyone. His pro-slavery sentiments landed him in hot water with the majority of the population at the time. He is also known to have been the president when the Civil War started and later dumped things over to President Lincoln. Therefore, we see why he assumes a place on this list. He was one of the most disliked presidents in all of history. That's really saying something when the list has 45 members on it. Being in the 5 even makes you one hell of a bad guy in someone's story. How do you even gain that kind of reputation? Number 5. Benjamin Harrison. He was known as a president famous for implementing extremely high tariffs. For just about everyone, this can be a deal breaker, and he was no different. This is why he makes the list of worst presidents in history. Not only that, but he was also famous for taking Hawaii and making it a part of the US. We all know how lands were seized at the time. Therefore, you could expect some pretty negative sentiments related to Harrison. He was also known to have praised his soldiers for one of the bloodiest massacres in history, the Wounded Knee Massacre. Number 4. George W. Bush. Chances are many of us were consciously aware of Bush's presidency. From the early 2000s, Bush has been president up until Obama replaced him. He is famous for being the US president when 9/11 took place, an event that shocked the world and cost thousands of lives. Though we were all emotionally charged after 9/11, the war on terror which he started took away millions' livelihood. Innocent people were killed around the world under the pretense that the American troops were fighting terrorism. Granted, they may have killed a considerable number of terrorists, but in the bargain, millions of innocent people suffered as well. Some of the hardest hit areas from the war on terror were Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, and Pakistan. Number 3. Richard Nixon. It really shouldn't come as much of a surprise that Nixon makes this list. Not only was he famous for the Watergate scandal, but he also promised to end the Vietnam War. The war continued for years after he was elected. Therefore, there was a general consensus that he was somewhat of a liar. Not keeping up to his words and being the center of one of, if not the biggest scandal in American history, gives him a definite place on this list. In fact, putting him well into the top 3. Number 2. Andrew Johnson. He took over after Lincoln was assassinated. It was rather odd that he immediately began to change the very thing which Abe Lincoln became famous for, freeing the slaves. Andrew Johnson soon passed a bill which once again oppresses newly freed slaves. Imagine that, huh? They had just gotten free and now they were being pulled back and having their rights stripped away from them yet again. Johnson's spot on this list has a lot to do with Lincoln. Since Lincoln was perhaps one of the most loved presidents of all time, Johnson could never fill his shoes and in turn undid what Lincoln had worked hard for. Now that we have been through the entire list, surely you would have assumed who was left. There can be none other than the most recent president of America. Number 1. Donald Trump. Mr. Trump was famous for his role in show businesses. Being one of the most famous businessmen in America, his run for office proved to be successful, thus making him the 45th president of the U.S. He is a man who knows how to make money and how to entertain. Surely we all remember the time where he was a special guest in the WWE and shaved Vince McMahon's head. However, on a more serious note, Trump has been cited as being a white supremacist, sexist, and racist. His opinions and views do not resonate well with the majority of Democrats in the country. His brash, rude, and uncouth demeanor has led him to becoming the most infamous president in American history. That brings us to the end of this list of worst U.S. presidents of all time. It's interesting to note the legacy which some of these people have left behind. It's also very sad to see the abuse of power and how negligent they could be at times. Now, if you stayed till the end, do comment, "Make US Great Again," so we know who our favorite viewers are. What do you think about these rules? Are these rules too strict, or actually necessary? Let us know in the comments below. If you like this video, make sure you share this with your friends, and subscribe to LUX Life and click the bell icon to get regular updates. LUX Life. Find what calls to you. See you in the next video.